Kathryn Bostic, welcome to Cultural Attache.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, we're going to talk about the world premiere of Drag at Dallas Symphony Orchestra, which is taking place this Friday, is it not?
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Great. Drag is centered around the performer Gladys Bentley. What was your awareness of Gladys Bentley before Karen Slack reached out to you about this project?
I have to say, I was not aware of her. I was not aware of this extraordinary force of an artist. So I'm really glad that Karen brought her to my attention.
Was there a learning curve about who she was and how much you were able to uncover? Because there isn't a lot of history about her. So I'm assuming that you had to go down some rabbit holes before you found all the information that was helpful for you.
Right. Yeah, I there wasn't a lot, but I did some research. I listened to her performances. I watched her on the Groucho Marx show. I mean, I was just blown away. I mean, she's she is beyond extraordinary. Beyond.
What makes her extraordinary in your eyes?
She is like a force of nature, musically, um, and her not just musically in the sense that she's this phenomenal entertainer, but she's fearless in her embrace of that. And and it was to me the foundation of her lifestyle. People often talk about her as being openly gay and lesbian speakeasy performer that was very appealing for her body lyrics and you know um, the fanfare that she got from all kinds of people, which is remarkable. But for me, in tandem with that, it's just the foundation of who she is was this largesse of her artistry and the largesse of her presence too, because they said she was, that had this powerful presence.
How much do you think that comes from how self-possessed she was even as a teenager?
I think it's a lot to do with how she walked in the world. I think she had to be self-possessed, given what I read about her childhood was very, very difficult and contentious. Allegedly, her mother wanted a son and just kind of shunned her because she was a girl. And so she had a tumultuous relationship with her family. And I think in that space, she probably leaned even more into who she was and finding places to hold on to self-worth and self-regard. And I think the music was an easy access point, an easy partner. And it was because it's her. She came in the world this way.
Given all we know about her, you sort of summed it up, but I mean, her her peak happened during the Harlem Renaissance. She only lived until 52, which I believe was 1960 when she passed. But she had her own style. She had a certain style of music that she did. When you're presenting her story through your own music, what is the balance that you do between striking a chord for the music she presented and performed versus the way you want to present her story in 2025?
That's a really good question because Karen Slack, the soprano, Grammy-winning soprano who reached out to me to collaborate with her, we were talking about this last night. And I, I was torn because so much of that stride piano, that really jaunty cadence, fast up tempo. I was like, how can I translate that for orchestra and Karen? And, how can that be successful? And what I decided to do was incorporate that sensibility without necessarily having to be so literal about it. I mean, her music and her self-awareness in who she I say who she is because it's so big that she's still she's still in in our midst here. She's still a huge presence. And I really tried to invoke her essence, her spirit, her heart, and some of her challenges. So my intention is to create a score that reflects her outer adulation and success, but also her inner turmoil. And as I said in an earlier statement, I want to musically create the outer stage and the inner stage.
So does Karen get to reflect one or the other, and the orchestra takes the opposite of the that equation?
No, I didn't really want to make it so, draw the line, if you will, because to me, that's not what life is anyway. Life is very nuanced and complicated. So I always say music is conversation. For me, it's always been that way. It's always storytelling, no matter what the canvas is, whether it's just a song or you have an orchestra, you have a jazz quartet, whatever the genre is not so much as important to me as understanding what's our narrative. So the narrative for this score reflects these complexities and these different nuances. So you're going to hear the bravado that you know, that she claimed and that people gave her. You're going to hear moments of intimate vulnerability. You're going to hear reflection and introspection, and this is all reflected in all the performance elements, the orchestra, Karen. So it's intertwined.
I had the opportunity to read Lorraine Cary's libretto, which I think is terrific. Um,
Right.
how did you collaborate with her? I mean, that's always the question, music, words, etc.
Yeah.
I have a feeling these it feels like in reading it, this must have been a parallel path.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lorene wrote, it's incredible what she wrote, and it was very helpful in informing me musically. And I never like to assert myself in how other artists, you know, work their muse. I never like to say, "Oh no, that's not good." That it's not about judgment. It's about, again, conversation. And so we went back and forth quite a bit because I wanted to be aware of letting the music also be a part of the the way in which the story was going to be conveyed. So there was some re-editing because the other thing I wanted to do was repeat some of the phrases that she had written so that it could really sort of sink in with the audience and help further highlight certain talking points in the story. But it was fantastic. I mean, she's just, again, I think when people get into what the intention is, and the intention in this instance was to delve into Gladys Bentley. What is her demeanor, not only as a performer, but her inner landscape? And I think Lorene did a fantastic job. It made my job real easy.
Well, composing music is never easy. The thing that stands out to me is I think in reading the libretto, I assume that this is not just a conversation between the soprano and the orchestra, but it absolutely is sort of a challenge and a conversation to the audience. And I say that because the last lines of this libretto just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up because I thought, this is who this woman would be today, and it's probably who she was then. And that line, if you don't mind me saying it, is, "This is my last drag."
Okay, spoiler alert.
This
Go
is my
ahead.
last drag. I'll say that. This is my last drag, and then there's
Yeah, yeah.
then there's the line.
Yeah.
So we won't give the spoiler alert away, the spoiler away. But I mean, you are bringing her attitude to life in 2025 through this, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. definitely. As I said, even now, she's light years ahead of most people, you know. She, from what I could sense, she really was one to live by her own rules, and her own way of being. And she may have put up a facade to sort of appear to sacrifice that, but in the long run and even in the short run, it was something that she was, not going to compromise on, even though she faced a lot of heartbreak because of that stance she took. But I mean, I have so much respect for who she is. Like I said, I talk about her in the present tense, even though she passed away a while ago, because the impact of her music and of her story is so relevant.
You did an interview 11 years ago for Blueprint Review, and you said, when people can feel the honesty in music, that is when you know you've done the job, and that is what I strive for always. What was the journey for you finding the honesty in the music that you were writing for this piece?
Um, that's a good question. When I write music, I know this sounds very cliched, but I really try to get out of the way. I really do. Again, you start getting informed with so many different options and possibilities when you are self-expressing. And I think for me, it's always been a gift to trust that kind of flow of instinct and inspiration. Just reading her story, reading about her, watching the different videos, listening to the audio clips, it provided this incredible montage that was visceral. So I always try to start from a place that's visceral because for me that's a very authentic and honest place. And I don't use that word authentic lightly because I know nowadays it's like the word. How authentic? Oh, where's your authenticity? But there's there's um there's a space that I like to really yield to when I am being informed, like how's that hitting me musically? And there was so much that I was provided with when I listened, when I read about her, there was so much. So I just started creating, I guess you could say, sort of a menu of themes and possibilities, like a pastiche. And then from there, I would musically sort of start to have these conversations along, of course, with Lorene's libretto. And I mean, I know people look at me like I'm crazy when I say the music writes itself, but it really does. I mean, it really, really it becomes its own vessel of guidance, if you will. At least that's kind of how I like to think about it. I hope that was clear.
It is clear. It is clear. I completely understand it. Um, a lot of composers are grateful that they get commissions and that they get their world premieres. And then the challenge, of course, is to have second and third and fourth performances by other orchestras. I assume that by virtue of Karen Slack being involved in this, that you probably have greater opportunities for other people beyond the Dallas audience to see and hear drag.
Yes, that's true. And as a matter of fact, the Fresno Symphony was very supportive and co-sponsored the commission as well. So I know it will be performed there. And yeah, we're really intent on getting this out there, getting this performed as often as possible. We want to do a recording. And we're still tweaking things here and there because that's just the nature of new work. But I think this definitely has some legs, some wings.
Some wings because we never saw Gladys's legs because she was always in a suit.
Well, she was in that dress. She did wear that dress on the You Bet Your Life Groucho Marx, but it was a long dress. You're right. It was a long.
She
Yeah,
had her own style for
she
sure.
had her own style.
It's funny because I looked up to see if there was any kind of influence with Cab Calloway because I don't believe that they dressed all that differently in a certain
No,
but apparently they only worked together once, I think is what I saw. But she is like the female Cab Calloway in terms of how she clothed herself.
yeah, white tux and tails. Yep,
Yeah. But
top hat. Mhm.
but she was more than that. I mean, she didn't just go by Gladys. She went by Barbara Bonnie Minton as a stage name, and she later in life married two men. I mean, this is a woman who I think is rich in possibilities to explore because she's not one thing.
Yeah, and I think that it's a reflection of her self-discovery. You like we all have our ways of doing that, our journey. And as I said earlier, there was a fearlessness in what she was trying to discover about herself, even at times when it was very difficult for her and vulnerable. Because what you're speaking of refers to the part of her life that was in the McCarthy era, where there was such, as you know, just a horrific level of control and judgment. And if you wanted to be accepted, you had to, go by these very, very restrictive rules of existence. And so she tried to conform to that and maybe even try to convince herself that this was going to be her way of redemption. But I think who knows? I mean, I don't know the level of sincerity in that choice that she made, or if it was to protect herself from not being so abused by people who were judging her.
Well, that's one of the things I loved in doing research. I looked at Picturing Black History, and they described her as, quote, consistently and unapologetically that she broke unspoken rules of gender norms, which seems like she would be doing exactly the same thing today because
Yes.
we're living in a time, as we all know, where gender norms are being vigorously defined by half of the political parties across the world as one particular thing. How political do you think her approach to life and career was? Um, and is writing a concert work about her an equally political act in 2025?
I think that she was very aware of the conflicts and the pushback she was going to continuously get for being outspoken, for being openly gay, for being just almost unapologetically not only gay, but ridiculing criticism and ridiculing judgment. Because for me, the statement, it's not even so much about a political statement. It goes back to my favorite word, which is autonomy. She was she was not going to make light of that for anybody, but she was going to hold a mirror up and show how ludicrous it is to think you can control every individual on the planet with a construct of what is right and what is wrong. And so I think most importantly, she was about her art and her music. And come what may, that's what I feel.
And do you think that writing a piece about her to be performed in 2025 is also a political act? I mean, we're living in very strange times right now.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking about it for myself. I wasn't thinking about it so much with that in mind as a political act. I'm not one who, I'm not dismissive of these times that are very polarizing and intense. I always go to a place of my particular perspective in this instance is to address that, but to address it more in terms of her passion for her music and her as I said, she's just unapologetic about how she's going to present that, whether it's in the way of her lifestyle, whether it's in having to adjust and repress that lifestyle. She never wanted to compromise her musicality. And I think when she was feeling that it was being chipped away, I think that affected her health. I think that's what caused the demise and the atrophy of her physical health, because she had to constantly fight all these different types of levels of judgment, of trying to make a living as she became less and less popular. She had to try to fit in, and that's not who she was. She wasn't here to fit in, and that is my political statement. None of us, for me, are here to fit in. We're here to stand out in our autonomy. Like, how do you choose to walk in the world in this time that is so incredibly divisive? And how do you find the humanity for yourself that is, to me, transcendent of all of that? And um, I mean, I don't want to ramble on and on because it's a rabbit hole you're getting me to go into, and it's a tricky kind of twist and turn conversation. I just know that she's inspired me because of the immense talent, and also she knew she brought joy to people. She knew she made people enjoy their life just for that moment while they were being entertained with her. And she treasured that. And she knew that that was part of her gift and how powerful that was.
She also knew enough to predate Lady Gaga by but no, but because she said it seems I was born different, which is just a variation on born this way, if you ask me. But I think all of us are born different. How do you feel that you're being different than other people and from other composers finds its way into your life and your work?
Wow, you're asking all these like deep Jungian, Freudian, like you going all how to ask me that again? Because how do I find how I'm different? What? Say what now?
Well, because she said that she said, I always, I was just born different. At least I thought so. And I'm paraphrasing here, but I think we're all born different. How do you think your being different informs both the way you live your life and the way you compose your music?
Um, I don't know that I think about it so much like that, even though I do feel, especially now, I'm like, where's the mothership? Because I'm definitely planet cray cray. But in all sincerity, the music has become such an incredible tool for me, not only to write music, but to inform me how to live. And in that way, it makes me a little different because I don't embrace constructs the way most people do. I would say that about me. I don't look at checking boxes and the window panes of living in this particular box or that particular box, because music is so vast. It's such a vast and fluid way of expressing. And so to access that, you can't even put it into words. I mean, one minute I'm writing a symphony, the next minute I'm writing a song with just me and the piano, and the next minute I'm having a jazz jam session. And it's accessing something that is very otherworldly. So in that way, I guess I could say I'm a little different because I kind of live like that.
That sounds like a great way to live to me.
Well, it helps me keep my sanity because I just, you know, it's such a gift. And to be able to receive that and to create from that space, it's life changing.